Welcome to the Infinite Waves podcast. Today I'm excited to welcome Matthew Hall from SAIT. Matthew leads product strategy, design, and experience at one of Canada's top institutions, creating digital solutions that help shape how students learn and prepare for the future of work. Let's explore AI and future technology. At the Infinite Waves podcast, we are dedicated to spotlighting leaders who blend creativity with technology to shape the future. Powered by Creative Innovations Lab, this podcast delves into innovation, paving the way to a sustainable, smarter world. Tune in and let's pioneer the next wave of possibilities together. Welcome back to the Infinite Waves podcast. In our previous episode, we had Dwayne Calder from NMAX talking about how experience is changed in the utility space. And today we have Matthew Hall from SAIT talking about how he's changing the future of work. Let's get into it. Let's start from the very beginning, Matthew. I want my audience to understand who Matthew Hall is. Can you share your origin story?
Okay. So my origin story, I suppose, I grew up in Saskatchewan. As I was progressing through university, I was interested in increasingly moving further away from Saskatchewan. So I would spend my summers in Vancouver. Once I finished university, during one of those summers, I was working in software, met a girl. She happened to be from Australia. We ended up going there for a 6-month vacation, which turned into about 8 years the first time. We've been back and forth for almost 20 years now, and have been back settled in Canada for about the last 2.5 of those. During my time in Australia, I had any number of jobs, but decided to go back to university. I did my preliminary dissertation and then a PhD at the University of Western Australia. I spent a lot of years teaching. So I was teaching like literature, and that was just a huge passion of mine, right? So I loved it. So my work was divided up into 1/3 research, 1/3 teaching, and 1/3 kind of helping master's and PhD students kind of complete their work and, see the dangers ahead. Eventually, my own research started to shift it out of the literary world and really into design and what design meant in terms of kind of education and pedagogical kind of research. I had kind of undertaken the shift, and I was kind of trying to convince the vice chancellor of the university I was teaching at that I should have the opportunity to, really transform what I was doing. And she didn't really think that was going to be the case. So I was looking around and I met this team at a really interesting startup, and they were like very definitively focused on the future of education. And both I convinced them, I think, that I could do some of my research there, and they convinced me that that was a good idea. And so I first came on as a designer, and then as a consultant, and then was leading a broader team there. After that experience and working with universities basically around the world, I joined the SAIT team. So I lead the product strategy team there. I've got a team of, I think, 12 or 13 of just absolutely exceptional product managers. And we have about 650-ish products and services.
Wow.
Across a huge range of verticals. So everything from health to business to leadership to AI.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm pretty sure one thing that my audience would be curious about is you mentioned a girl that you traveled to with Australia. What happened to that?
Well, we're still together after many, many moons. We have 3 kids, all of whom were born in Australia at various trips.
Congratulations.
And are all here in Calgary now.
Awesome. You mentioned that your journey started in education and teaching, and then right now you're no longer directly teaching in a traditional classroom, but you are still teaching as a coach, as a soccer coach. How did that transition happen?
It's one of those things. Once you're involved in your children's lives, you get roped into things that you shouldn't be getting roped into, and As you know, I think I've coached for a number of years. Both my son's team, both my older son and daughter play at quite competitive levels of soccer. So I was the assistant coach of my son's team for a couple of years, and then the last few seasons I've been coaching on my daughter's team. So just to give a little bit of shout out, between 12 and 18, female soccer players lose 50% of players every year. So it's a huge, there's huge demand for a supportive environment, getting more female coaches involved to kind of really continue to up those numbers.
Okay, no, that's amazing. You're helping your daughter's team. You mentioned a very interesting journey, how you changed from education, academic, into design and product development. Who or what was your biggest inspiration to go through that journey?
That's a really tricky question, but a really good one, Russell. Look, I think I've always been someone who's pursued the new. I get inspired by an idea and try and go as deep as I could on it. And that naturally leads you in different directions. This gets into something I wanted to talk about later, but that notion of adaptability. How do we build adaptable careers? How do we build an adaptable skill set that we can apply in multiple different areas to pursue those passions as they come up? And I think that's really something which was nurtured in me at a number of roles, but having exceptional bosses who believe in you and say, you can do this, you got this, go give it a try. And I think part and parcel of anyone's success is having those people who will champion you.
You mentioned a number of bosses that kind of mentored you a little bit. What kind of mentorship would you advise for leaders right now to follow the path that you're in?
Advice, as a leader, I think it's your job to believe in the people on your team more than maybe they believe in themselves, and to see around the corners that they can't see around yet, to see the the bumps in the road that are coming, and to prepare them for those. It's not your job to keep them on your team forever. It's your job to see them succeed in the long run. And I think preparing them to be adaptable, to have a growth mindset, and just to be capable of learning. I think that's the fundamental kind of focus of what my role is. And look, I'm really blessed to have just an exceptional team, which I hope stick around, but also I'm going to, absolutely celebrate when they go on and, lead their own teams. And I hope to, have provided a little tiny bit of an example of how they can do that.
Yeah. When you hear the words education, innovation, and pedagogy, what comes to your mind?
Look, I think the future of work and the future of education are changing at such a fundamentally incredible rate right now. It's absolutely exciting. I don't think you can do one without the other. I think the ed tech push of let's just throw AI in everything and we can technologize every classroom. You can't do that without the pedagogical expertise. So that is the science behind how we learn and how we teach people to learn. And I think one without the other is going to fall apart. And we've seen the failure rate in the ed tech space and ed tech worlds is astronomically high, even compared to normal startups. So I think having pedagogical experience, having that kind of knowledge and mastery in those domains is fundamental to how we design courses, how do we design outcomes for our learners, but also how do we set that experience up. Right, there's a big sign on my wall that says the student experience is the product. And I fundamentally believe that, holistically, every interaction, every engagement, and the outcomes we're deriving for those learners, that's the product we're delivering on.
So as you know, technology is evolving at a very fast pace. In our previous episode, we were talking how AI is changing things into a totally different landscape in one person's lifetime. And that's happening in the education space as well. And how people learn, how people adapt have been changing enormously. How would you advise institutions or product managers to change the educational way people learn so that students will be prepared for the future of work?
So Jack Welch has this quote, and it talks about how an organization's ability to learn is its ultimate competitive advantage. And I think SAIT's goal of being, this global leader in applied education and applied learning is fundamentally tied to that. It's not only how we learn, but how we're applying what we learn. And we at SAIT, both on the product team, the learning design team, that's fundamental to what we look at. It's what's the experience and what are the outcomes. When we start to design, it's based around our learners, right? We go deep on the design side because we fundamentally want to build courses which matter to people and derive the outcomes which, enhance their lives, which make everyone's lives better and provide them more opportunities. So when we do that, we start to really break down course outcomes in a number of ways. So we can start to think about like an MKSD framework. So what's the mindset, knowledge set, skill set, and tool set that we can engender within these courses so that even if the tools change, you still have the skills and the ability to learn something new and apply it in that field, or to update kind of your processes and adapt as you go. And I think adaptability is this really interesting and challenging kind of like socially complex challenge, right? And I just think there's something really amazing that we're seeing happening now, and it could be just to be a bit topical today, Trump is announcing a number of tariffs. How do we as business leaders adapt to those tariffs? How do we adapt to technological change? And I think engendering that in your teams and teaching them that there's a way forward is kind of inherent in what we do. I think it's about being solutions focused and not problems focused, and kind of harnessing all of our human creativity. I think the kind of creative imagination and that ability to play, to solve problems is really fundamental to a lot of product and design work. And that's one of the things about it that gets me the most excited.
You mentioned something in your answer that really stuck with me. You mentioned the biggest advantage for an organization is the ability to learn. Can you elaborate a little bit more about it? Why I'm asking is because the organization right now, Creative Innovations Lab, is exactly following that, and it's the mantra that we all believe in. But I'd like to hear from your perspective, what does that mean?
I think fundamentally why we go to work and why we work in collaborative environments is because I want to learn from you and I want to learn from your team. There's a million things that I will never, ever be an expert in. But if I can take your ideas and take Russell's ideas and kind of combine them with something that I know, we can create something better. If you get the chance to ever go to the IDEO headquarters, there's a big sign on the wall that says, all of us are better than any one of us. And I think as you design huge projects and we're solving really complex problems, that's fundamental. We all have a part to play, and we can all contribute to something much bigger than any one of us could do by ourselves.
Yeah, all of us are better than any one of us. Wow, that's a wonderful saying. And like me as a podcast host, like one thing that I really love is like having amazing guests like yourself sitting here and sharing your experiences, your knowledge with me. And like I have the luxury and like the blessing of learning something amazing from different perspectives. And yeah, I completely agree with that saying. I know that AI right now is impacting a lot of industries, and education is an industry that's evolving significantly. What kind of changes would you, Matthew Hall, would like to see change in your industry with AI or future technology?
Okay, I might just preface this with a bit of context. So today in the Alberta environment, I think 11% of businesses are engaging with AI in a meaningful way. And in comparison, in Europe, that's about 70%. And in Asia, it's another step higher as well. So in many ways, we've held on to traditions maybe a little bit more than we should here in Alberta and in the ecosystem in general, right? So I think education has a role to play in enabling people. There is the efficiency part that I think all large organizations can utilize AI to operationalize things and be more efficient, right? Get to those outcomes sooner so that we can then focus our time on actually delivering value for people. And I think in education, both in the product design, product development, and then kind of into the learning design space, there's huge aspects where AI is going to have an impact. When you're doing market research, where you're kind of coming up with creative concepts, when you're trying to test things in the market, how do we start to do that at scale and speed? On the design side, how do we build something which delivers on the promise of personalized learning? How do we deliver AI tutors which can follow learners through their journey at a learning institution, at a university, and kind of see them succeed? How do we, and we had this conversation the other day very quickly, Russell, how do we not only ensure that they have support when they're having trouble, but how do we harness their strengths? How do we play to their strengths? And how do we kind of help them use that to their advantage? And I think where AI can kind of lean into their creativity, lean into their strengths, that's where you're going to see people really deliver on the best of them, and not just kind of deliver rote answers, which is education that's been in place for 150 years.
Going back to one of our previous conversations, we were discussing how right now education, how it works is like we would learn something and we would go and sit for an exam and to answer the questions that was given to us. And what if we could come up with our own questions so that we decide which area or which expertise, or based on our skills, what area that we want to further study or further answer or dive deep. That way we focus on the skills of each individual rather than generalizing the outcome of education. And like you said, that would be a wonderful thing to achieve by AI or any future technology in general.
And look, within the continuing education space at SAIT, that's what the majority of our courses are focused on. It's about industry authentic work. It's about applied learning, right? I don't care if you can kind of regurgitate definitions back to me. That doesn't help you. It doesn't help you in your work. It doesn't help you in your day-to-day life. But if you can build a roadmap for a product, if you can, those kind of things, develop a go-to-market plan, test it out either through AI or in simulation or in work integrated learning. These are all really fundamental to how we test out ideas so that our learners graduate and we know they're going to succeed at their job because they've already either worked with that company or have a portfolio of examples where they can demonstrate exactly what they've achieved and that they've followed the practices that company wants them to.
Yeah, absolutely. I really love that about SAIT. I know like all our leadership, most of our staff are from SAIT, and how we got to know these people were from because SAIT prepares the students during the time they are in university to work with companies like us or any company that they want to either get a mentorship or experience directly, knowing and preparing them for the future of work. That way they are not getting that cultural shock. They are not walking to unknown territory. They are coming to familiar spaces. That way they are able to perform better and mark their territories and own it and grow in that space. So I really like that about SAIT.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and I think where we're seeing a ton of success within the Con Ed space is at that intersection between education and industry. And so a lot of my work is like bringing in industry partners. How do we start co-designing courses so that we're not only hitting kind of labor market gaps that they see now, how do we hit the ones 3 years from now? How do we prepare students for the future of AI in finance and accounting? Somewhere, we know that these industries are fundamentally shifting, and how do we prepare for people for that? It's working with the industries at the very forefront of those spaces and designing for their needs. And I think the outcomes both for the ecosystem, for the learners, and for the organizations hiring within Calgary and Alberta is just fundamentally better.
You mentioned something very interesting, Matthew. You mentioned that preparing students for the future of finance or any industry in particular with the changes of AI. That's a very interesting topic because what we do right now or what we learn right now on the internet or anywhere might not be relevant in a few years to come. How do you tackle that challenge, and how do you create that product or build that experience for students to prepare them?
Okay. as I mentioned before, so really focus on that mindset, knowledge set, skill set, tool set, that the tool, we want to approach tools agnostically, right? This is the tool we'll use to solve the problem today, but tomorrow the tool may be radically different. And it really is in that mindset and that kind of ability to adapt at pace that's going to lead you to be successful. We see this in research all the time. So we're very lucky that SAIT has a number of areas in which they're global leaders in applied research. Green building technology is one. The drone space is another one that we love to brag about. The pace of change in drones, in aviation in general, is so rapid right now, and the amount of work that's going into building an ecosystem within Calgary to support drone research, drone kind of life, drone organizations, new industries, new kind of adaptations, it's all here, and all of those skill sets need to be built at once. Right, so we need drone pilots, we need drone maintenance, people to do drone maintenance, we need people who know about kind of informatics, we need kind of people who can read data that, let's say you fly a drone over an old oil field to check for emissions. Who reads that data? How do you interpret that data? What does the data viz process look like? What about data storytelling out of that, right? And then let's say a drone goes down and, breaks apart. Who's building that locally? Do we have to import all of that? So we're building an entire ecosystem around this one opportunity. And Wade at the Drone Research Center is leading a huge range of projects, which are just, you'll have to have him on as a guest, but it's exceptionally interesting, and it's really, I think, a brilliant opportunity to build out a whole new industry within Alberta and within Calgary.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I don't know if our audience knows that SAIT has one of the largest drone research facilities in Canada. And being an Albertan, I'm very proud to say that all the time. And yeah, and that's going to change a lot of things for the future of how we do. In our previous episode, we were talking about how farms are adopting this drone technology into doing what they used to do it on a horse. Right now they're doing in their living room, watching Netflix or chilling, having breakfast. They're able to do these things. The way we live life have changed significantly, and these technologies are continuing to do that at a fast pace right now with AI.
Absolutely.
So coming back to AI, I asked this question from all my guests. If Matthew Hall was given a magic wand and asked to solve one challenge with AI or future technology or any technology, what would that challenge be and why?
That's a very good, huge question, Russell. A very difficult one to tackle. But look, I think the personalization of learning, and I think really building a system which adapts to and adapts with our learners to support them where they're having troubles, to kind of, as we mentioned, kind of lean on and get them to lean into their strengths. I think that's really fundamental to education products and education innovation as well. So that's probably where I would start.
Okay, that's a wonderful thought. And to wrap up this conversation, let me ask something like this. For the educators, innovators, product managers, product design, product strategists in the education space, what advice would Matt give them to face the future?
I think education is a fundamentally difficult space in which to work. There's a million rules, there's a million kind of guidelines that you have to follow, and I think it kills a lot of good ideas. And I think the intellectual timidity which it shapes is sometimes a barrier to doing great things. And I think looking beyond that, thinking about the art of the possible, as opposed to, this is a problem, I can't do this. Let's be solutions focused. Let's try to apply AI in new ways. Let's try to think about what technology can do today and what can it do tomorrow, or 10 years from now, and start to design products and experiences which elevate the lives of our learners and deliver value for them.
Yeah, that's a wonderful answer. Like kids, students are the future of our generation, and they are the ones who'll be trying to create real impact, change lives, and solve the next level of problems. And education plays a huge role in building that platform so that they are ready to face those challenges. And I really appreciate you giving these insights and coming on the show and sharing these wonderful stories and inputs, Matt. Before you go, can you tell our audience how they could connect with you?
So if you want to reach out to me, I'm at matthew.hall@sait.ca, or probably easier is on LinkedIn. You should be able to find me relatively easy there.
Thank you very much, Matthew, for being on the show and sharing these wonderful insights. And with that, we are going to wrap up this episode of Infinite Waves. So stay tuned and we'll see you on the next wave. That's a wrap for today's episode of Infinite Waves. We hope you're inspired to pioneer your own innovations. Brought to you by Creative Innovations Lab, where creativity and technology drives the future. See you on the next wave.